Welcome to the Bold Analysis. My name is Frank. I've been closely following the vetting that is being done by the Committee of Parliament that is vested with the powers of doing the vetting. And for your information, maybe, or through our lenses, the vetting processes of the various cabinet nominees should be like the public interview or scrutiny to look into the credentials and whether the various nominees are up to the tasks that they are required to carry out as per the dictates of the Constitution. One vetting session that had my attention was the vetting session for the former CS in charge of defense, that is Honorable Aden Said Duale. Honorable Aden Bare Duale, not Said.
I just want to know where the nominee came from, the Military of Defense, because I happen to have served in the Committee of Defense and interacted with the ministry a lot. There is something peculiar that happened that I've not seen, where the public officers use defense choppers, military choppers, and the military artillery to move around the country, putting the risk of the defense and of course the officers. In fact, in the public domain, it can be true or not true, which if not true, I will withdraw, is that the military has feared you. You have become more military than the military themselves. Is it true, and why did the military fear you?
I don't think the military fear me, but you have put many things. I don't know. You talked about choppers, and then you brought the issue of fear. So, are you saying I fear going by military choppers?
No, I said I've never seen other public officers other than the president, who is the commander-in-chief, using military choppers to move around the country, and other members of the public office who are not in the military. And also, there is a one.
You're talking of civilians? Because military officers are also public officers.
Yeah, like like the deputy president, like the ministers. This is something that I've never seen for some time. So I wanted just him to clarify whether also deputy president is allowed to use military choppers, or was it misuse of power in your... Because it's something that I've never seen with the previous ministers.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, let me say it because it gave me a lot of bad publicity. But when you serve in a public office, that's part of life. Within the reading and the instruction of the Commander-in-Chief, at the Ministry of Defense, the Commander-in-Chief is the President. The President and the First Lady are the people allowed to use military air assets with a rider. If the Commander-in-Chief allows the Speaker of the National Assembly to be airlifted from Nairobi to Bungoma, that is in order, but with the concurrence of the Commander-in-Chief. I don't know, I don't think the rank and the file and the leadership of the Defense Ministry fear me. I can assure the member that I'll try my best. Nairobi River Commission used to be under the Ministry of Environment, now is not under me. It's under the Deputy President. But we need to deal with the Nairobi River Commission. The pollution that is going on in Nairobi River Commission, Nairobi rivers, because of the dysfunctional sewage system, which needs to be upgraded. The dumping sites of Nairobi County, all of them, including Dandora, are on Nairobi and Nairobi rivers. So the governor of Nairobi, at some stage, and I hope he will listen to me if I'm appointed, he has to look for other dumping sites outside the Nairobi River Causeway, Rivers Causeway. So coming to military recruitment, I agree with you, is a systemic issue. And I was watching yesterday, the speaker said, the president himself is concerned. But we have agreed before I left the Ministry of Defense that going forward, before the next recruitment, we must sit, we must have a conversation. The way the speaker said yesterday, I was watching him, we must communicate candid to the public, and we must deal with that monster. It cannot be a situation where few people are taken to court-martialed. Kenyans, in their mind, are saying, for you to join the military, and based on the national security sections, is supposed to be the face of Kenya. Kenyans, for them to join the military, they must pay between 400 to 500,000. I think that is unacceptable. If more, that's unacceptable, and it's part of the corruption that I was telling you, which is I think all of us together, the citizens themselves, the anti-corruption agencies, all of us together, we must face on. Why did I deploy KDF? I did not deploy KDF. The framers of the Constitution put Article 241, 3B, and 3C in the Constitution. So Kenya Defense Forces are in the streets. They're in Boni Forest fighting Al-Shabaab. They're in North Rift making sure that we deal with the banditry. They were in Westgate during the terror attack. They were in Garissa University during the terror attack where we lost many people. So for peace, public order, public safety, where the police are overwhelmed, Article 241 3B kicks in the function of the Minister for Defense. By then, me, is once the article kicks in, then I am supposed to do certain subsidiary legislation. I gazette. And Mr. Speaker, all of us know Article 132 of the Constitution obligates the President to protect the other arms of government. He is the chair of the National Security Council. That day, the Office of the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court, as an institution, was under threat, under attack. Parliament and the colleagues sitting here, if KDF did...
Inasmuch as Duale was or tried answering some of the questions that were raised, but in some areas, I felt that he was very either insufficient or ignorant in the way he was supposed to respond to some of the questions, or rather lacking detail. We are giving credit that in some areas he really tried, but then in some areas he seemed to lack details. And most of those questions were questions that were surrounding politicization of the various cabinet or ministerial roles that he will either carry out in the future or that he carried in the past. One of the areas was on the issue of the chopper, the issue of the use of military choppers by the Deputy President. This has been a thorny issue and informed one of the decisions as to why he was transferred immediately upon appointment to the Ministry of Defense and shifted to the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change Issues. And in his response, he confirmed something, that indeed the continued denial of the use of military choppers to the second in command, that is Rigathi Gachagua, had the blessings of his boss, William Ruto. Because he said that that is not a decision that clearly, he said something that clearly the only people who are authorized to use the military choppers are the commander-in-chief and the first lady. But then he was canny enough to say that in special circumstances and situations, like a case where the Speaker of the National Assembly was allowed the use of the same, can be granted. But then we've observed one thing over time, that ever since he was removed from or dismissed from the role of the Cabinet Secretary in charge of defense, Rigathi Gachagua has been using the military choppers. So, question that begs is, who is fooling who, or what is the real situation or real information regarding the use of military choppers? Or were they on a political witch hunt to frustrate the second in command, Rigiji or Rigathi Gachagua? Then he also made a statement on something that, or on an issue that I've been following also closely. He made some claims that during his tenure as the Cabinet Secretary in charge of defense, he negotiated deals on behalf of government, and some of the deals that he negotiated on behalf of the government was on the securing of 150 armored personnel carrier vehicles for the military, the military agreements in terms of defense cooperation between Kenya and the US. Then, one thing comes out clearly. It seems that some of the cabinet secretaries who were part of the first cabinet of William Ruto have one thing in common, that they lie openly without any fear that people know that they are lying. When those deals were being entered into, some of them seem to be a direct deal between the partnership of the President William Ruto and the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, by then, or Joe Biden when those deals were being got into agreement. We saw clearly that Duale's presence didn't feature so much, despite himself trying to take credit for the same. Anyway, somebody would argue that since he was the CS, then he's right to claim. But then Kenyans would want to know the truth, that if it is indeed true that you are the one who is involved in these deals, then it should come out clearly and not you trying to lie. The other issue that came out during his interview was on the issue of why he was transferred and what was his relations with the military of Kenya. Of course, he failed to defend the fact that he was accused of high-handedness when dealing with the military. And that is the information that came out clearly, that some of the military bosses or the generals did not have it easy or did not like his nature of leadership when within the military. He appeared as somebody who wanted to boss his way around when the military has structures in place and the cabinet secretary in charge of defense always takes up almost a ceremonial role within the military ranks and not somebody who wants to push or give orders around the generals. Because for one, they recognize that the cabinet secretary came in a capacity of a civilian and then they are military officers, and therefore the work of the cabinet secretary is to represent the military within the National Security Council, which equally has a representative who is the commander-in-chief, rather the commander-in-chief of the defense forces and also the chief of the defense forces. Therefore, the other thing that also came as a rub shoulder within the military ranks is on the issue of the deployment of the KDF officers on the streets to combat the protests. This one didn't sit pretty well with some figures within the military, despite the gazettement notice. You know, Duale tried to escape from the tags and blames that he did authorize the gazettement of the deployment of the Kenya Defense Forces on our streets. He said, he was trying to say that, you know, that is a work that emanates from the Constitution, when in real sense, it was his signature that came out from the Gazette notice as having authorized the deployment of the military in our streets. The other issue that he failed to articulate maybe himself well on was on the issue of forest land grabbing, and especially the encroachment within the forest reserves in this country. This is a very thorny issue. So Ipantria tried to deal with it when she was at the helm of the Ministry of Environment, but then she didn't address it sufficiently. I was glad when Honorable Duale, when Duale said that he is not Michuki, but he'll try to be like Michuki. But then the task that is ahead of him in this sector of environment, if he so claims to be assertive, then he must also be ready to take the bull heads on. Because, you know, politicians are the most affected here. There is an area of conflict of interest. The number of people who own these parcels of land within the forests, a majority of them are politicians. Therefore, I saw Duale give a 30-day ultimatum notice upon his conferment that he will have dealt with these people. But then we are waiting to see that. But then a question that I keep asking myself, sometimes back when this country was prone to terror attacks, Aden Duale came out at one point and said that he knew the people who were behind, for example, the Garissa terror attack, and that he will name them. I expected that committee to ask him or put him to task. Why has he failed to do that? Almost more than 7 years later, even at a time when he served as a cabinet secretary in charge of defense, he served as a leader of majority, and now serving or going to serve as a minister of environment. That is a question that I think majority of Kenyans expected that committee to ask him. But then, just from those interviewing sessions, there are issues that are coming out clearly. That one, you know, the sessions, they seem or tend to have a soft landing for the people who are appearing before those committees. Some of the questions you even ask yourself, why are they asking questions that seem to be being soft-coated? They don't want to hit these people with the tough questions that they're supposed to be asked. For example, in today's session, I expected maybe, for example, a follow-up onto the investigations on what led to the chopper crash that carried the then Chief of Defense Forces, General Ogola. But that didn't take a center stage. Also on the issue of the Garissa list of terrorists who took out a center stage in that terror, didn't take a center stage. And also something did come out from this committee, that the people who have been so far vetted, the vetting is trying to prove that being in the cabinet in this country seems to be a business on its own. It's it's a business for the filthy rich. Because you look at the net worth of some of these people who are being vetted, while they were being vetted in 2022 and their net worth in 2024, then in a span of less than 2 years, some people have accumulated more than 100 million Kenya shillings in their net worth. But then they are not being scrutinized on what contributed to this. But then I think that it would be wise or prudent that moving forward, maybe a law would be made that a lifestyle audit can be taken of a person before they appear before this vetting committee, maybe entail the use of investigative agencies such as the NIS, such that that figure that these audits will be bringing out is what now the panelists can use to question the people who are appearing as the nominees to be vetted, rather. Not the other way around, that they give the figures themselves. That figure, they should find it there. Then from that, they should be asked why or how they reached on those specific values. Then, the other thing that clearly came out from the interviews that have so far been done, you know, this was the Parliament of Kenya's golden opportunity to absolve itself from the blames that it has always been used by the executive to pass laws that are not in favor with the electorate or the representatives or the people that they are representing. But then that absolution has still not come out clearly, especially now when that panel that was doing the vetting, headed by the top leadership of the National Assembly. So therefore, the parliament still seems to be like the weak link in fight for a just Kenya. People with questionable character will end up being approved, and will not be surprised if all the people will appear before parliament maybe will be approved. And there are people also with questionable integrity. Thank you for watching. That marks the end of our analysis.